So now we're going to use the die cuts and the magicals a little bit differently. So I'm going to use my die cuts to create a leaf stamp. And the way I'm going to do that is by taking my dies, and I'm going to cut some foam that has adhesive on one side. If you can't find the foam with adhesive on one side, you could just do regular foam and then glue it onto your basically stamp base, whichever one you want to, or whichever way you want to do that. But the fun foam cuts very, very easily. So I'm going to put my leaves in here, and I'm choosing two of the leaves that I didn't die cut for that stamp so that I can use it for something else. And you just die cut them. Like I said, they cut super, super simple. You don't even have to go back and forth. It cuts all the way through. Most of those foam pieces are going to fall right out, and the ones that don't, they're super easy to pick out. And then I've got them glued onto just a little piece of wood that I got at the dollar store, and I cut it down to the same size as a card front. So I think I did it 4 by 4¼ by 5½. No, 4 by 5¼ just because I knew that for most ways that I would want to use this, it would be a little bit smaller than the card base, because I typically have a mat around it, or typically put this onto a card base. So I'm going to get some scrap paper here, and I'm going to grab my brushes. Actually, I only need one brush because I can use the same brush for all of the colors. And I'm going to use the green, the orange, the brown. Yeah, I'm going to leave the red and the blue out of there. Don't want too many colors because it gets a little bit, well, really too colorful. So I'm just taking an embossing pad and tapping it on here. This one happens to be a color box one. Typically I use Versamark. I'm trying to use this color box one because they no longer make them anymore, so I'm trying to just use it up so that I can free up some space. But the Versamark will work exactly the same as this. Put it wherever you want it on your card, and just like other stamping, I hold it in one place and then press around it. And then we're going to use our powders. Now I have another class on this platform that's called Mica Powder Techniques, and these magicals will work for all of those techniques. So the ones that I'm showing you in this class are not the only thing that you can use these powders with. You can use them with other things. So check out that class because you'll get even more ideas. And I could do this whole thing with just one powder color, and that would be really, really cool too. But I just thought, why not choose several, since fall leaves tend to have different colors on them. These extra powders, you can't really use them for anything, especially since I'm mixing up different colors here. So when I do take the excess powder off of here, that's pretty much going to be thrown out, but I'm trying to make sure not to use too much excess. And I'm typically just pouncing it where that ink is. Now that ink isn't enough to just stick these powders where they are and have them stay. I need to mist it with some water. So before I do that, there's a lot of excess powder around where that ink isn't. A Swiffer cloth is your best friend for that. And you can just rub that right off. Let's move this to the side. Actually, I'm gonna toss the powder so I don't get it on my craft desk. And then I'm going to close these. So now I'm going to lightly mist this and then let it dry. Now that mist, the water, is going to activate the binding agent in these powders. And then once they're dry, I can use them on my card and I don't have to worry about them rubbing off. So that's about all I need. There were some larger dots. That's fine. I'm just going to leave it where it is. And I think I got it on this leaf, but I'm just going to go from this side, a couple sprays, and then let that completely dry before we move on. This piece is a 1/4 sheet, so it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2, so I do need to cut it down to 3 3/4 by 5 inches. I'll have all these measurements on your supply list, but I'm going to let that dry completely before I cut it down, because then I can choose exactly where I want to cut it and I don't have to worry about possibly smearing anything. All right, our background here is dried, and I'm going to cut down my cardstock here, and I think I'm gonna just do a little bit off of each edge. I like the way that it's kind of centered on cardstock. This is actually a Mixed Media Heavystock, same as the backgrounds. And the reason for that is because we misted the water. I wanted to make sure that it could handle being misted with water. Regular cardstock for this might have been okay, but I just wanted some continuity. So I'm going to take some walnut stain distress ink and just lightly go over the edges. Just want to frame it a tiny little bit. And because the water is all dry, I don't have to worry about messing up my leaves. If I run my finger over it, I'll get a little bit of the mica on my finger. And that just happens, but I'm not going to get a whole lot, and certainly not as much as if I hadn't misted with water. So I've got my card base, I've got my mat already glued down to it, and I'm going to glue this piece on, and then I'm going to hold it down with the acrylic block while I put my sentiment together. 1 second. There we go. And holding it down with an acrylic block, like I said before, it just saves having to hold it with my hand. That way I can work on other things while that is busy drying. And I'm going to put the glue over the back of my sentiment here, glue it to the shadow. These are just ones that I die cut from previous videos. Or from previous cards, I should say. Either way, you know what I meant. All right, there we go. And now I'll glue this to the back, and then this card is done. Super simple. And this technique would work with stamps as well. I chose to die cut and create stamps out of my die cuts just because I didn't have any leaf stamps. And I also wanted to show you that you can take your die cuts and create stamps out of them. Some obviously would work better than others, but just know that that's always an option. So beautiful, simple leaf card. And I just love that shimmer. I just can't get over that shimmer. So I'm going to put my acrylic block on that to let that completely dry. And there we are.